and I am super happy to be with you this Monday in, what are we like second to last week of May, last week of May. Super excited to see all of you. We're going to get started here in just a second, but before we do, I want to go over a couple quick housekeeping items for everyone. Especially important if you're not one of our frequent flyers, maybe it's been a while since you've come to one of these chat and learns with us, or this might be your first event with us. So either way, welcome. Now, I just want to highlight for all of you that today's event is all about you. It's about our community members, and we want to make sure that you are able to participate as much as you would like to in today's event. So you are very encouraged, if you'd like, to turn your cameras on, share your smiling, maskless faces with us safely. No need to be Instagram perfect. I think I'm on day 3 of dry shampoo. So if you've got, messy buns, furry coworkers, non-traditional workspaces, bring it all, y'all. You do not have to stand on ceremony. We want to meet you where you are, so please feel free to join us. If you don't want to show up on camera, that is totally fine. And if you have any kind of privacy concerns, the biggest thing to know is that as long as you don't come off mute today, you will not show up on the live recording or on the stream of today's session. So hopefully that'll help if you have any kind of privacy concerns. Now, you can also participate by asking questions or sending in comments about the speaker, about what we're going to talk about today. So if you've got questions or comments for Chhavi, please feel free to send those over into the group chat. Let's say you want to be super deep cover Black Ops, don't want anyone to know you're here. That is okay. You can still participate. You're just going to send any comments or questions you have to me. So you'll DM them to me in the group chat instead of sending them to everyone. You can find my name, Meg Alexander, on the dropdown. Now, I do want to highlight for everybody that today's session is being recorded. So what that means for all of you is you don't have to worry, or if you miss something that somebody said, you don't have to feel like you need to take notes. It's also really amazing if you maybe missed a resource that was mentioned, or you just want to go back and review and see so much more of this video again. You're more than welcome to do so. So what's going to happen is everybody that registered today is going to get an email from us in about 1 to 2 business days, and that'll have a link to where you can rewatch this recording when it's posted onto our website. Now, if you don't want to wait, let's say that Chhavi says something so amazing today that is just mind-blowing. You cannot wait to share it with a coworker or friend or a relative. You don't have to. You can always head over to our YouTube channel. I'll share the link with y'all for that in just a moment as well. But our YouTube channel is going to be a great place to check out the live stream. They're usually posted within about 5 to 15 minutes of the end of the session. You can also check out a huge section of our archives there, our recorded library of chats. You can check out all of those on our YouTube channel. Now, you are also encouraged to follow us on other social media. We are at Power to Fly on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. We're not quite on TikTok yet, but I think that's probably coming here within the next couple months. And we really encourage you to follow us on those channels. We share all kinds of stuff from, up and coming job postings. We share blog posts. We have resources, all kinds of great stuff. So I definitely recommend that you check us out there. And please feel free to take photos or video as we go today. You are more than welcome to, let people know that you are working, you're learning with Power to Fly, or that you are upskilling with us. We want to make sure that these resources are available to as many people as possible. So please feel free, tag us. We'd love to share or retweet or do whatever we want, with your posts. And we'd love to keep growing our network. So please feel free to let us know. Now, before we dive in to our introductions today, I just want to highlight that Chhavi's here today on behalf of Skedulo. Now, I'm going to share their link to their company page with y'all here in just a moment. But one thing to know is that if you're listening to what we're talking about today and you are interested or curious about Skedulo, I very much encourage you to take a look at their Power to Fly page. So I'm putting that into the chat right now. And this is the link that I just posted will take you to the page that you're looking at on your screen. Now, that's going to be their company page. It looks like, there's 89 roles posted. And one thing to know about this page, you can check out and get more information about benefits and about the mission of Skedulo on that page. You can get more information on what their DEI efforts are like, their perks. You can also check out events that they have partnered on with us. So like today's session. And of course, you can always search their open roles. Now, if you are looking, let's say you're actively job seeking, but you don't see anything on Skedulo's listings that really suits you. Even if you're not seeking and you are just kind of interested, but you want to make sure that you don't forget about Skedulo the next time you do go to look and see what else might be out there for you. Best thing you can do is go to this page at the top right-hand corner. There's going to be a button that says follow. If you click that, it's going to put you on Skedulo's follow network. You can do this with any of the companies that are on powertofly.com. You can follow and unfollow as many times as you want, as many companies as you want. Obviously, I recommend you check out Skedulo. But what that does is effectively it works like your friend at the company. So it's going to tell Skedulo that you are interested in working with them even before you fill out an application. But it's also going to keep Skedulo on your radar by letting you know when they post a new role. So it's a very good way to make sure that you don't lose track of these great companies that you hear about, as well as letting them know that you're interested. So when there's new roles to be posted, if they're going through Power to Fly, we're going to check those lists to see who that's already interested in that company might be a good fit for that role. So it's a very easy way to try and put yourself kind of head and shoulders above the crowd. Now, I'm really, really excited to introduce you to today's speaker. So Chhavi Shah is joining us, obviously, from Skedulo. Chhavi is a senior solutions architect at Skedulo with 8+ years of experience in the solution architecture space, specifically for SaaS, software as a service, B2B software across the enterprise and mid-market businesses. Now, Chhavi strives to leverage effective communication, multidisciplinary, and collaborative management skills to develop technology into solutions, markets, and relationships across pre-sales as well as professional service teams. Chhavi, we're so happy to have you join us today. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our audience before we dive into questions?
Very excited to be here. And I often get the question, what is a solution architect? Because I feel like it's a very ambiguous term and it's fairly new as well. So I just wanted to kind of set the ground on what my role really is like. So it typically varies a lot, based on the experience you have, the expertise you bring, and the stages of customer life cycle that you're involved in. But to put it in a nutshell, it's someone who acts as a glue between your customer, your internal sales team, your product and engineering teams, and customer success. So my role typically at Skedulo requires, getting involved with the prospect pretty early on, understanding what their technical and business requirements are, so that we propose the right solution to them, map out our product into a solution or a specific use case for customers, and essentially, help the prospect to convert into a customer, but then stay on through the life cycle of their relationship with us as well. So just wanted to give a brief, context around what my role really is like. And, I've been in the industry for about 8+ years. I've mostly worked in the SaaS B2B space. I was at another startup prior to Skedulo, which eventually got acquired by Conga. So yeah, I'm happy to, bring my experience here and answer as many questions as I can today, but it's great to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We're so happy to have you. All right, before we, the last thing we're going to do before we dive into questions is talk about some of the main takeaways for today's event. Now, I did talk about at the top of the hour that you are all encouraged to really drive today's conversation, and that is absolutely true. So what you're seeing on your screen are some of the main ideas that we're going to hope to cover today. We identified these both with conversations with Chhavi, as well as by taking a look at the questions that you all submitted when you registered. Now, all of that to say, if you took time out of your day to be here with us now while we're live and recording this, you deserve prime treatment. So we want to make sure that the time that you spend with Power to Fly and Skedulo is well worth it. If you've got questions, please let us know. Put them into that group chat or DM them to me. Please make sure that we can't make sure that this event is worth your while today unless you tell us what you want to know. So if you submitted a question and you're not sure if we'll get to it, ask it again. If you are, if Chhavi starts talking about something and then we change topics, but you want to go deeper into that, let us know in the chat what you want to talk about. You really do have the power to drive today's conversation. So some of the things that we're going to touch on, we're going to talk about some ways to successfully get to know your client. explain your project to them, as well as get buy-in. We're going to talk about some soft skills that would help you improve your communication as well as collaboration. And then we're going to touch on some tips to bridge the communication gap between technical and non-technical professionals, which, as someone from the purely non-tech side, can tell you is just as frustrating for the non-tech people as it is for the tech people. So absolutely a worthwhile pursuit here. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we'll get to focus on our speakers today. But Chhavi, one of the questions that we got asked a lot was, what do you think are the biggest challenges that you face with clients, and how do you overcome these? So for you personally, what has been the biggest challenge that you've faced when it came to dealing with clients?
Yeah. So I think one of the recurring challenges or themes that I've often noticed in my role when I'm working, especially with big customers, lion enterprise customers, is their desire to eventually just rebuild their existing business processes into our product. With any new technology solution or product, customers do come in excited with the opportunity of, new growth and enhancements that the product can provide to them. But they are quick to fall back to their original ways of operation if they're not, cautioned from time to time. And they do this primarily to motivate internal adoption, really. So I find that it really helps to listen to their problems and just illustrate the technology impact potential that our service offering has and that our solution can bring. And this could be done in a bunch of different ways. I tend to use a lot of visual cues like mock-ups and prototypes, and these could be, even low fidelity designs. Just, something that can emphasize and demonstrate the benefits of building, let's say a customized, heavily configured solution as opposed to buying a productized and standard capability. Obviously in the context of their problem though. But I find this pattern to be very repetitive across a lot of large customers.
That actually makes a ton of sense, like the idea that, yeah, it seems like kind of a nuanced and specific thing, but then you get more and more interactions and realize they're all kind of permutations on the same thing.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So did you feel like it was more about overcoming these situations, or more about kind of developing that go-to of like, okay, here's what we try first. And here's, when I've had this happen, this is, a path that I've followed. Is it about that overcoming case by case, or is it more about kind of pattern recognition and understanding what's likely to show up?
It's definitely pattern recognition, because you are going to end up in this situation no matter what, because they are married to their ideas of operation, and they want to do things a certain way, and you may not necessarily always overcome it, but at least you've done the due diligence of laying out their options to them, educating them on the capabilities that you can offer as a part of your service offering. And then you're empowering them really to make that decision going forward. So I've had a lot of customers who initially will, be receptive to your advice and your guidance, but ultimately they just, want to do things their way. But then you've done, like I said, you've done your due diligence at that point. You've given them all the information you have at hand that can enable them to operate at better efficiency, or make the most of the product that you're suggesting to them. But ultimately, it's, the decision is in their hands. So there's not much that you can do, but you can always fall back on the advice that you gave them and kind of, reiterate why you're suggesting things a certain way. So they can make that analysis and, make the judgment of that decision as well.
Okay. Now, a lot of people had questions around how to handle it when clients aren't happy and also possibly might be, at the churn stage. And a lot of people wanted to know, like, in this situation, how can technical professionals work to convince them, otherwise, convince them away from the potential to churn? What do you think that technical professionals can do at that stage?
I think what really helps me personally is earning the status of a trusted advisor with the client. And this needs to happen pretty early on in your relationship. So you should really work with them to sort of guide them and partner with them to achieve the quick wins, identify the quick wins and try to achieve them, and then work towards the overall success of the plan. So also be very aware of, the technical capabilities of competing solutions and products that are out there in the market and in the same ecosystem. So you can drive home the overall value of your own product, how it separates from, the other solutions that are out there. Leverage the capabilities that your product has. while internally you're also kind of championing and product influencing your own solution with key functional team members like product and engineering. Because as client facing technical experts, you're expected to know what the market and customers are looking for through our frequent interactions with them. So try to analyze the similarities in their request, but also weigh out the pros and cons before you suggest enhancements to your internal development teams. And then the next thing that I would say is that, try to identify the return on investment that your customers would gain with your solution, and proactively try to create a path forward if it is failing to meet their demands right now. You obviously have to partner with a lot of XFN teams, like your customer success managers, your delivery team leads, sales, to successfully retain a customer. So the onus is not on one person; it's a team collaborative effort. So your best contribution would be, to just use your business development skills, identify what's the problem that they're struggling most with, try to document it, and then provide a plan of action, that supports these actions. And from time to time, it's really important to remind them of the big picture solution, because sometimes customers get lost on, one small aspect of the solution that is not really working out for them as they prefer. So try to reinstate what the overall, solution design would be and how that would really help them achieve their goals.
Okay. Now, when it comes to kind of getting that buy-in and really laying that groundwork with clients, do you have any one thing that is your go-to? Like you absolutely always hit this point with clients to get that buy-in or get that trust?
I think it's very important to reinstate, what the customer is really asking for. Try to actively listen to them so that they realize that you are understanding what their goals are, what their pain points really are. And once you start speaking their terms, you adopt their vocabulary, you start speaking in their own sort of language, they get to a point where they realize that you're also actually trying to help them. And you have, a vested interest in getting their problem solved. So that automatically, creates a good path for customer buy-in as well. And it helps you become that trusted advisor, like I said. It reinstates their faith in you, and ultimately they know that you know what you're doing. You've done your research about their company, their business processes, and you're here to really cater a solution that's tailored to their needs.
I love that. No, I think that's very, very good advice. All right. So a lot of people were curious about how to what to ask clients, what to talk about. A lot of people wanted to know, what kind of questions you should ask the client in order to get to know them, so that you can really do that tailoring and understand their needs, so that you can, kind of meet them. What kind of questions do you think are best to ask when you're trying to establish these things?
I think there's honestly like a whole process of steps that you should aim for before you get to a tailored solution. But first off, I think it's important to familiarize yourself with the various user personas, or the users of the product or service that they are trying to release this out for. So identify what their skill sets are, what are their day-to-day responsibilities, what are their current pain points of the systems they're using, what are their objectives of the product, and their relationship with technology. How tech savvy are they? That'll give you an insight into training as well. And at this point, pay attention to the keywords, like I said, that they're using to describe the business. Try to adopt those words in your conversations with the client. Once you've done all this, you can kind of then draw empathy maps, which will basically provide a visualization medium to your clients that'll help you articulate, what you've learned about the specific types of users. And in a way, it'll also promote design thinking, because it's very difficult to get clients to, visualize or understand the design that you're proposing if you don't promote that design thinking early on. So I find tools like Miro very helpful. They help you build a supporting narrative to the data that you've collected based on your user interaction and user interviews. It kind of helps you, tease out more about the customer data, informs you, of what their UX UI preferences could be. So you can keep these, points into consideration in the back of your mind as you're coming up with a solution for them, and also just visualize their overall needs. So, use of user persona mapping, user journey mapping, and design prototyping. These are all pretty much visual cues that I typically use when I'm interacting with customers for the first time. It really helps you, get in depth with what their needs are, and helps you really draw questions out of them, but in a very seamless way, if that makes sense.
No, it makes a lot of sense. And you're right. It is, it's kind of a dance, right? And it sounds very similar to a lot of the dynamics or a lot of the processes in place for sales. You have to understand what the person needs, or what the needs of that client are, to be able to make a sale. And not only that, but like build the relationship so that you can, continue this, kind of keep this business relationship going.
Yeah.
We have a lot of people, especially from the tech side, that were very concerned about doing something like negotiating with clients. And negotiations alone, already, I feel like the word kind of pricks people's ears up, or you have an immediate like feeling of either I'm good at this or you're not good at this. So if we can distance ourselves from kind of the knee-jerk reaction of the idea of negotiating, a lot of people talked about how, they're not very communicative, and so they struggle with that client-facing side of it. Do you have any tips for people that are trying to negotiate with clients but don't feel like they have the skills, or are worried about how to go about doing it?
Yeah. There are tips, but I will say effective negotiation does require, solid communication skills, unfortunately, which you can build over time. And I think what's really helped me in such situations, I think, is, proactive planning and practice. So practice your content out loud. This could include just talking about your statement, what's your purpose of the meeting, have an agenda, go through your opening and your closing statements, almost like a lawyer, I want to say. But if you say it out loud, it'll prompt you to polish and clarify your first key message, because that can be quite impactful, So planning and prepping for such meetings, along with actually even your internal team members, will kind of help you stay aligned in your unified message to the client. But also be wary of not making any commitments without consulting with your team. So don't feel like you're pressured to say a yes or a no right then and there. It's completely okay to defer a decision, because you have to work with the team. You have to make sure everyone's aligned before you go ahead and give your word. So be very clear about what is important to your team and organization, in terms of the minimums and maximums. For example, what is the maximum you're willing to give away, or the minimum that you're willing to accept in order to resolve the conflict of negotiation? So be clear on that, and then leverage your team's, product, your expertise, and other variables, as much as you can. And then finally, I think just really listen to your audience. Try to relate to them, so they know that you're understanding their point of view. You're understanding where they're coming from, and you truly want to strengthen your relationship while trying to think about this as objectively as possible. It always helps to kind of highlight the win-win situations, or even just provide alternatives when there's not necessarily a win-win situation. But also just try to separate the person from the problem, because this can sometimes be easier said than done. Try to address the problem and not the personality. So just maintain a rational and, a goal-oriented frame of mind. And you don't have to be an expert in negotiating, be honest, lay down the facts, and try to understand their point of view. But at the same time, I feel like, you have to keep working on your communication skills. It's effective. Like I said, effective negotiation will only land better once you've worked on your communication skills a lot.
Yes. Oh, 100%. All right. So let's kind of take this scenario and flip it a little bit to the point where you're negotiating your project with other tech professionals who have more experience in the market than you do. This one I found very interesting, not because I have any experience being in this space, but I wanted to see what your tips would be for somebody who was in this spot. What would you say?
Again, I think I would say that maybe just leverage your product capability, your skill sets, drive home the overall value that your product would bring and the return on investment. Because if they have let's say if they have any standard compliance and security requirements that you can provide evidence for, then do that due diligence way in advance, so it doesn't give them a reason to question you on certain things. But if it's really just a difference in opinion on, let's say, a technical solution, then try to understand their point of view and see if you can accomplish, the project in a way that's preferred by them. But at the same time, be very clear about your methodologies, your goals as an organization, and communicate that to them out loud. Again, I would say, try to approach it with a stance where you're truly trying to help them. You're not trying to be a difficult partner. You're being collaborative with them, and try to meet them, halfway through and discuss their options with them. It's all about enabling them, empowering them, because once they feel like they have, this shared responsibility of, deciding something, you will really gain their buy-in at that point. They'll feel like they have the agency and control to make those decisions. But at the same time, you are guiding them. So yeah, hopefully that helps.
No, absolutely. And I think it's important to highlight, like you said, not that there's a ton of psychology involved in it, but it's not that you're trying to pull the wool over someone's eyes, exactly. Right? You're trying to build up that relationship to the point where you can both trust each other to, that you're giving the other person that fair shake, or you are, you really are listening to what they want, and they are listening when you tell them, here's what the capabilities are, here's what the options we could explore. Yeah. And I think you're right. It's very, very important to set that tone so that that way communication is less difficult as you're going on.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. We had a lot of people concerned over things like price points of services, especially when people say like, oh, well, that's too expensive. A lot of people were curious about how you can best, explain technical details that really justify a price point to somebody who may not really understand how that all works at surface value. What do you say when people, when people respond saying like, oh, well, we can't do that, it's too pricey, or we don't need that service, it's too expensive?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that while it's useful to kind of highlight the technical details to justify those pricing factors, what I think would be more useful is to, again, just point out the value and the benefits that the service is going to bring to them. For customers who are very price wary or price shoppers, as you call them, you could point out that there's, more to a product than the price alone, like the quality that you bring, the guarantees of the product that you're bringing to the table, the productivity, the efficiency, and the sophistication in the implementation and deployment. So try to highlight those aspects as well, because ultimately, hourly fees and daily rates can be easily compensated for the time that you're spending, but your value and contribution are not necessarily compensated. So my suggestion would be, try to identify what are some of the tangible and intangible values of the specific customer in question. So tangible values, I guess, could be, how much is it going to increase their profits? Will it increase the revenue line, and by how much? Will it lead to an increase in efficiency, and by how much? And then intangible values could be, creating an overall better reputation for them, a better branding, reducing their stress levels during the implementation, which can get very high in some cases if it's a very fast-paced implementation. So try to identify, what these tangible and intangible values are for them, and try to conduct a value consulting or a value measuring discussion. So this can help you come up with messages that will prove towards those tangible and intangible values. So typically this does require, expert value consultants, but you can conduct, such sessions with a slightly lower level of sophistication yourself. There are lots of, resources out there on the internet that provide you, tools and guidance methodologies to do that. But I think that'll overall help you understand what is it that the customer is really looking for on a long-term basis. Because just honing in on, on minor or, nuanced technical details will only get you so far, but you have to really focus on the big picture. So try to, get that conversation going pretty early on in the process, and then reinstate those values each time, a pricing discussion also comes up.
And I think that's a really good point to make, that idea of both the tangibles and the intangibles. Things like you mentioned, kind of the peace of mind and knowing that we'll take care of this, it will be fine. Mm-hmm. That's a huge intangible, but also incredibly impactful of thinking of being able to tell somebody you're not going to have to worry about this.
Exactly.
Yeah, huge value add. And I love that you're right. You could go very streamlined and professional and high tech and go with somebody that does this, and get help from someone that does these kinds of things all the time. But yeah, it is absolutely also feasible to do this, on a small, in a small way with the people or the clients that are in front of you.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. We did get a really interesting submission in the chat here. This person said a key factor, in my opinion, to a successful implementation project is the handoff between sales and then the implementation tech team. How do you suggest to run a successful handoff meeting when you're trying to transfer things between sales and then technical resources?
I think for me personally, what helps is that I am one of those resources that stays consistent throughout the pre-sales and the post-sales process. So I'm continuing forward, my knowledge and history of the client's pain points. But at the same time, I'm kind of using my technical expertise, behind the scenes to understand what type of a solution they would benefit from, and keeping track of that internally, making notes about it, designing a solution that can eventually be then consumed by our technical teams. So what helps, technical teams really understand the crux of the problem they're implementing a solution for is to break down the functional needs of the customer. Typically developers tend to go off of user stories that describe a certain user action that a persona of the system would do, and what is the expected outcome of it. So breaking down those user stories in layman terms for technical developers really helps them understand, the root cause of the problem, and also helps them kind of understand from like a UI and a UX perspective, what are the things that we can add to the solution that will really benefit the customer, optimize the solution for them without having to rely on someone like a solution architect as well. So it's really my job to give them the background context on, on the implementation or the user story itself, so they can consume that and then, use that information to develop the solution itself. But yeah, I think having, one person or, a key resource that continues that knowledge from the pre-sales cycle to the post-sales really helps implementations, because it kind of makes sure that you're not losing track of their pain points. You're constantly, measuring each milestone that you're achieving, as a part of the implementation, and analyzing if it's really fitting their needs or not. So you're always doing a gut check at multiple stages of the life cycle of the project, because you have that context and that this is what would be well received by the customer and what would not. So hopefully that gives them some insight.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think that's a really great way to approach it. All right. So let's talk about kind of more of these clashes or kind of pain points that might exist between clients and internally. A lot of people talked about how the company that they work for is very fast paced, but the client might not be from the same culture. Do you have any advice on, setting and meeting expectations, especially when your client might not really love the solution that you proposed, but are not cool with the fact that y'all are ready to kind of pivot and change gears and let's try this and let's try that. How do you recommend handling those pain points when there is such a large gap between fundamentals of how y'all do business?
Yeah, this happens a lot, when you're working on a project, especially for large organizations. I think the overall pace of the project could generally be slowed down due to like heavy involvement from a lot of stakeholders and, team members on the customer side. So in these situations, I think it's important to identify who those key members or the inner circle of people from the client's team are, whose opinions on the solution will really decide the fate of the project, and try to work with them to manage the pace, so that it can be kept up by both teams. So I think one example would be, try to understand their implementation methodology, and see if it differs heavily from yours, and establish a middle ground. You'll see a lot of software companies, they they adapt a hybrid waterfall and agile implementation methodology that kind of helps them still do those, iterative developments, but at the same time gives them the opportunity to do a gut check of the requirements and, ensure that everything that's being built is truly meeting their needs. And the other thing that I would say is, over communicate your milestones. Demonstrate the solution to them from time to time, talk about the progress as much as you can so that you can avoid any, last minute surprise reactions. So this way, you're kind of getting them acquainted to the project, you're getting them acquainted to the solution pretty early on, and you're giving them, the opportunity to provide early feedback. So this will not alter the speed of your delivery or, pose challenges towards the acceptance of your solution as well. But yeah, I think, it's all about communication, really just, understanding what their pace is, what are they comfortable with, and then finding a middle ground with them.
Okay. Now we want to touch on the communication aspect again, because obviously this is going to be key to a lot of the questions we're talking about today. But we want to talk a little bit more about the communication between non-tech professionals and tech professionals, especially when concerning a technical problem. Do you have any suggestions on like neutral language that people could use that might be a little bit easier to kind of avoid miscommunications between tech and non-tech professionals?
Yeah, I would say try to keep your explanations as simple as you can. And honestly, just use plain English, skip the technical jargon, try translating terminologies in layman terms as much as you can. You could also, consider providing them maybe like a glossary or a reference guide for the technical acronyms that you will be using or continuously using in your conversations with them, because you could be, enthusiastic and comprehensive in your explanations, but if they don't understand what you're saying, you're not going to get the response you want. And I'm generally a very visual person. And I've noticed that most clients prefer to absorb proposed ideas through visual content as well. So again, try to use maybe, prototypes or try to demonstrate your solution to them to give them better context. And then an easier, I guess, approach would be to draw analogies in your explanation. So you could maybe use like simple metaphors to help ease their understanding of the problem. For instance, you can always compare building a software or an application to a house. There are decisions to be made in terms of the materials that you have to choose to build a foundation first, and then determine what kind of tools you need to use to kickstart the development. So use simple metaphors that they can understand in easier terms and relate them to the problem at hand. And then I think you should also just give them the choice in decision making, because again, this will raise their level of shared responsibilities. But at the same time, reinstate this sense of control in their own hands. So, for instance, tell them that, solution X will give you and your users the ability to do, X, Y, and Z technology or ability, but it will still cost you 25% more. And solution, let's say Y, will give your users the ability to conduct something else, but will lower your costs by, let's say, 10 or 15%. So, they can be the judges of, determining what is the amount of ability that they want their users to have, while keeping in mind, I guess, the price point as well, if that's something that they're concerned about. So yeah, give them options in decision making. This will just really enable them to think and, make their own decisions. And then finally, I think you should just be, empathetic and patient, because if you really show them the empathy of, understanding their problems, they will feel comfortable to open up more about, what their current processes are and why they're doing a certain thing a certain way. And they'll also be more receptive to newer ideas. So, I feel like any person in a client-facing role has to be empathetic. It's a very, very, important trait, along with being an active listener as well. So you'll hear me, constantly bring up those two characteristics over and over again.
Yeah, of course. Now, just a not personal, but something that I was thinking of while you were talking. Do you think you ever run the risk of maybe like like if you're trying to simplify, right, you're going to try and simplify whatever it is you're talking about, so that you start off with clear communication. Everybody at least has an understanding, a shared understanding of the super base levels of what's going on. Have you ever found a situation where you dumbed it down too much? Or do you think it's still, it's far less likely to be a situation where you've oversimplified, and it's far more likely to be something where you kind of have to keep going down a little bit levels, just depending on the person's, the understanding of the person you're speaking with?
Yeah, sometimes it takes, multiple sessions to kind of continue that level of explanation. So I find that, again, just working with them, probably providing them the ability to be more hands-on, helps them grasp the concept much faster and easier. So, in our line of business, we sometimes also deploy proof of concepts that gives, a customer the ability to really play around with the solution themselves before making a decision. Again, in this way, you're kind of giving them, free reins of the product to understand, what its capabilities are. And at the same time, you're providing them that constant guidance and advice on how to use it and how it will really benefit for them. So yeah, if strategies of dumbing down the solution in layman terms doesn't seem to be as productive, then perhaps, give them something that will give them hands-on experience with, so that they can truly kind of feel their way around the solution or, the implementation, and provide more active feedback around that. Yeah.
No, I think that's a very good way to put it. Thank you. All right. So we've talked a little bit about, active listening, as well as good communication skills as some soft skills that will absolutely help this. Do you have any other soft skills that you think are very key, or at least incredibly helpful to navigating, client-facing activities?
Yeah, I think, active listening, honestly, just practice that, center your attention on what the customer is telling you, and repeat those details back to them, because I think this will really help them understand that you're realizing their goals. Try to adopt their vocabulary. Like I've said, it'll show them that you're truly listening and making note of their business. Again, be empathetic, understand what their problems are. They feel like you're invested in their case and are likely to help them find a solution, even if, things might look rough initially. But again, ultimately try to earn the status of a trusted advisor so that they can rely on you to provide the perspective and the guidance that they need at critical points of the relationship. So some, I guess, good traits of, earning that status of a trusted advisor that have worked for me, at least, are just being honest and forthcoming about, what they can or cannot achieve with a certain solution or implementation. And, very actively from time to time listing out how their solution can meet the needs that they've been talking about so often. Be curious, ask them questions, ask them why things need to be done a certain way and why they have a preference for things. But at the same time, try to maintain that collaborative tone, come from a place where you really are looking to help them, and you're not, dictating a certain approach or a methodology to them. Be as collaborative, and show them that teamwork will really get them somewhere with your solution.
Yes. Oh, 100%. Making sure that the client understands that you both want the same thing, right? You want this product to meet the needs that client has. Yeah. And I think you're right. It's very, very key to not only be there and develop that sense of teamwork, but to kind of, if you do that in the right way, then you're right. It can buy you a lot of goodwill and a lot of, like kind of breathing room down the line if something does go wrong. Yeah. Letting the client know that, like, it's okay. I get that this isn't cool. We don't know how to fix it just yet, but we will figure this out together. Like, that's going to buy you a lot of time to figure out what's going on, but also not have to worry about what the client, is the client like stewing while we're doing this? Are they confused? Are they worried? What is happening on their end? So I think that's great. Yeah. All right. So when we're trying to develop these communication skills, do you have any tips for how technical professionals can do that? Any suggestions that seem to work better with a group of people that may or may not be super open or super like they might not enjoy that communication or trying to develop that skill?
Yeah. I would say, try to identify what is the best form of communication for your target audience. And also what's their learning style. I think there are like 7 different types of learning styles, but um, try to understand what that is, and whether that's visual or verbal, written, logical. Try to incorporate them in your communication, because that will make your communication more effective as well. And more than just really passing the information, be careful about explaining and clarifying your thoughts and ideas, because passing information is just half the equation. Plan ahead about what you want the audience to remember from the conversation. Do you want them to take any kind of action? So the most effective communication will really result in people taking action and coming up with a plan forward. And I think interpersonal communication skills are something that you will, ultimately put to use both in your professional and personal life, but it will really help you at work. So try to work on your emotional intelligence as well. I've always taken time to kind of analyze how I generally react to people, what are my weaknesses, and, just analyze my work environment, because it keeps you aware of what your actions and feelings are and how it might affect the people around you as well. So try to be as emotionally aware as you can. Again, there's lots of quizzes online and guides that you can run past to understand what your emotional intelligence is like. But it's a key aspect of interpersonal communication, and it honestly just becomes a part of your personality as well. It's not just something that you're doing at work, but even in your personal life. So yeah, I feel like, again, practicing active listening is also really important, because listening is twice as important, I feel, as talking. And one of the big or important parts of effective communication skills. So the more you listen, I feel like the more you absorb information. At the same time, try to make good eye contact with your audience, respond appropriately to them, try to minimize interruptions as they're speaking, so that you can really consume the information they're giving to you as well, and then put that to use in your communication.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if this is something that you have experience with, or maybe you might have seen it with other team members. So I am part of the neurodiverse community. I live with bipolar disorder as well as ADHD. And so I have a variety of like little fidget things on my desk. So I'll be playing with, Play-Doh for a lot of the time or whatever. And one thing that I've noticed, especially when we're on, kind of client facing calls, is you might have people from other teams that also, similarly don't really like eye contact, or don't really like, that's not really necessarily how they listen best or how they're learning best. Do you think that, as far as yourself goes, is it smart to call out things like, hey, I'm going to be taking notes while we do this because writing them is, how I ingest knowledge better, or I want to make sure that I'm not forgetting these things. So please keep talking. I'm just taking notes or whatever.
Yeah, 100%. I'm also the kind of person who's always, taking as many notes as I can while I'm talking to my clients. And I tend to type pretty loud. So I find that to be distracting even for myself when I'm conducting these workshops with customers. So definitely, try to set the stage for yourself, where you're being very clear to them about, the multiple tasks that you're doing, while engaging in conversation with them. So they understand, the context of your work and your discussion and your involvement and your participation as well. But yeah, that's, a good call out. I tend to do that sometimes as well. I'm always letting them know that, if there's something that I'm doing in parallel that will be beneficial to our conversation, just keep that, candid, and let them know about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Cause you're right. I mean, it's incredibly easy to assume that just because somebody's sitting there and talking to you, that's all they're doing. And I feel like for a great many of us, multitasking is not like, something you do a couple times a day. It's the most of the day. Right. So yeah. Yeah. All right. So as we're having these conversations with non-technical professionals, what can we do to guide them so that we get a better explanation from them about what they want the tech professionals to do? This person says, I have a client that always tries to explain a technical matter, but he doesn't know too much about technical language. So it makes it very hard to understand what he actually needs. Now, do you think that this kind of falls in line with knowing or learning their vocabulary? Or is this more about level setting on someone's tech knowledge and kind of helping them to ooch them forward there as well?
I think it's a mix of both. And it's honestly an interesting problem where you're having to, listen to a non-technical person talk about technical, matter. But I would say try and frame your questions in a way to them where they sound non-technical yet simple, because this person is coming from a non-technical background. So it's better that you speak the same language, right? It's all about guiding them to speak that language then. So, you can ask them questions like, what is the problem that they're trying to solve and how do they perceive it to be solved? Or what would be a simple solution to the problem that they're bringing to the table? So kind of help them focus on describing that simplest solution in a non-technical way. Ask them, what are they really hoping to achieve? Business leaders can often explain a solution rather than the problem. They'll say that, oh, I just want one screen, I want less clicks, or I want a faster database. So instead, try to ask them, what is the overall problem that they're trying to solve and why is this important to their team? Because this can lead to the deeper discussion that you eventually will benefit from. And then you can talk about solving the problem in a way that aligns with their strategy as well. Another question that you can ask them is, what is the problem preventing them from doing? Because this will kind of reveal a lot of more detail about what they really need and why they need it without getting into the technical aspects of it. So ask them, those questions, and then also maybe ask them what is something that they've seen in the past that they would really like to have, because that'll kind of help you understand, this, I guess, the capabilities that really resonated with them in the past, and then use the strategy that was, adopted to drive that point to them in a similar way with this problem that you're tackling at the moment. So really just, dumb down the questions, I guess, ask them in very non-technical yet simple terms, what is the problem that they're looking to solve and why, without really delving into the technicalities of it too soon. So once you've understood the overall, the problem scope or the problem statement, you can then tackle it piece by piece. You could also ask to, involve more technical representatives on the call. I think it's completely okay to have a technical counterpart, join these sessions with you, so that they can, perhaps throw more light on the subject, while still, representing a unified goal from the customer side. So I guess, allow them to get that assistive need that they probably require in order to communicate their requirements towards you. So yeah, empower them more to relay what they're really looking to communicate to you.
Yeah, I love your second question that you had mentioned was ask them or find out what the problem is preventing them from doing. Because I think that's a really good way to sort of reframe it and get to understand exactly what they're trying to do. Because saying like, okay, well, what do you want it to do? Mm-hmm. That's a hugely open-ended question, right? You want to try and give them something that they can, give them a question that they will be able to answer and make sure that they understand. You're not asking them to speak from a tech perspective. You want to know, like, functionally, when you're using this, what do you want? Like, what is it stopping you from doing? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. Okay. The last question that we have is about renewal, right? So we all know that renewal is key to keep a business thriving, and collaboration is absolutely essential to maintain those relationships, right? Do you have any advice on how to get the whole team's commitment early on so that you can secure these renewals without worrying that, a snag or a follow-up question might put that kind of thing in jeopardy?
Yeah. I think in general, renewals require a lot of collaboration, but it's ultimately still the responsibility of an account manager or a CSM. So if the question is specifically, in the context of a CSM's role, then I guess I would say that as an account manager or a CSM, your first step would be to create clear accountability, ensure that everyone is communicated about, the kind of role that they will be playing in the relationship with the client. So try to maybe personalize the tasks that you can set for the team. Because this way you're setting the team up for success, right? You're assigning them tasks that are based on their individual strengths, really, and explain how each person's role is vital to the outcome. In some cases, it might even be appropriate to allow those individuals involved in, defining the work that they will be undertaking. So they're kind of in charge of the deliverables that they are supposed to bring to the table. So I think this will then just like ultimately help you, drive or allow that buy-in to happen from your collaborative team members. And then try to stay connected, schedule follow-up sessions, try to track or, monitor the progress that's happening between all of the team members regularly. This way, the more buy-in you get from more of your team members, the more productive they will be in executing those goals that you have identified as a part of the renewal process. But I do think that, ultimately it's kind of the account manager or the CSM's responsibility to drive the renewals forward. I guess with some accountability from the salesperson as well. So you kind of have to be the leader in, orchestrating everyone's parts and the roles they play during a renewal process.
Oh, yeah. No, and it sounds like you said, that's renewals are an entirely different beast all to themselves. And so, yeah, anything that you can do to kind of set yourself up for hopefully an easy renewal conversation would, obviously be to your benefit. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you for diving in there. All right. We only have 4 minutes left. This time always goes incredibly quickly. But one thing that I wanted to share with y'all, the slide that you're seeing in front of you is some questions that we had asked Chhavi prior to today's session about working at Skedulo. So let's talk about the company culture. You described it as open and collaborative. Could you expand on that for us?
Yeah, I couldn't come up with one word, so I came up with two instead. Skedulo has a very open culture because I feel, most of us feel very safe in voicing our opinions and our concerns about anything. And we know that we won't be ignored or judged. And that's a very important trait in a company. Collaborative because I feel everyone that I work with is extremely helpful, very encouraging, and very supportive of each other's work. Everyone's always cheering for you, motivating you, and finding ways to help you. So yeah, I think those two words do justice for me.
I like it. Yes. Now you said that your favorite part about working at Skedulo is working alongside smart, motivated, and passionate individuals. Is there anything that really has set the teams at Skedulo apart from teams that you've worked with at other companies?
I think at Skedulo, I find that the people are not restricted to working only in their lanes. They're always looking for challenges. They're always raising their hands up and, volunteering themselves to help out in a new initiative, whether that's internal or external. And even if it's, outside of their general scope of responsibilities, because everyone's looking for, new opportunities, new areas of growth. I've had, such a good fortune of working with people who've actually jumped around, within multiple teams in our organization to ultimately identify what is the absolute role that they really enjoy doing. And Skedulo gives you that flexibility to do that. It tries to hone in on your natural skills and provides you with an opportunity that will help you identify what you're good at and make the most out of it. So, really the people at Skedulo are my favorite part, and that's what's keeping me here. It's just working along with these people day in and day out who are always ready and willing to go above and beyond their gender responsibilities. It's highly motivating for me.
No, I mean, I know exactly how you feel. It's very, very similar to how I feel working at Power to Fly. It's very, it's very inspirational, right? To work with so many people that are doing such cool things, and it's kind of a keeping up with the Jones sort of thing, but like in the best possible way, right? Like you want to also be that like really contributory member. When it comes to interviewing, you had some top tips here. What do you think is really important, especially when you're trying to, you say like really listen to your interviewers? Are there any questions or any subjects that you think are the most important to like keep your ears open, like make sure you are listening to the answers to these questions?
A lot of times, when you're interviewing, your panel will ask you questions that are very close to reality in their organization. And sometimes the questions itself, they pose the answers that they're looking for. So that's kind of why I mentioned, listen to your interviewers, listen to the key words that they're bringing up in their, in their questions. There could sometimes even be a pattern. So try to, identify those themes of patterns and the similarities, and that'll give you an answer, a suitable answer to those questions itself. The second most important thing, at least for me, is researching the company and understanding what their mission and vision is. At Skedulo, I was at a point in my life where I wanted to work for a company that was really doing tangible work that you could see, I guess through your own eyesight, like the kind of impact it would bring. And for me, I think that was a big motivation to join this company. Because solving, the challenge of deskless workers, scheduling them and enabling their productivity is really real. And we've seen that, amplified even more post-COVID. So I feel very, very true to the mission that the company has. And it keeps me, keeps my, I guess, career goals fairly aligned with the company's goals as well. And then finally, I think, you should always be honest about what your skill sets are, what your experience is, because that kind of, gives a touch of authenticity to your personality in your interviews and makes you very personable as well. So never, shy from, I guess, accepting your inexperience in certain areas. Always just be honest and, promote a growth and a learning ability, so long as they can see that this is a person that is willing to learn and train themselves. It's always a good reason to invest in those individuals. So hopefully all those companies can see that as well.
Yeah, I love this. Oh, great advice. Thank you, Chhavi. We are at the end of time today. I just want to say thank you to our attendees. Y'all brought some really great questions to the event. So thank you so much for everything that you asked when you registered. And thank you so much for the attendees that really participated, wrote in more questions, added comments. Thank you so much for that. Chhavi, I just want to tell you, thank you so much for spending this hour with us. It's not just the work that you see in front of you, y'all. There is a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes, and Chhavi came incredibly prepared today. So thank you so much for spending this time with us and sharing your expertise. It's very, very much valued.
Thanks for the questions, Meg.
All right, that's going to close us out for today, but we'll be back tomorrow with some more amazing programming for you. Until then, if this was your first Power to Fly event, thank you so much for joining us. We hope to see you again soon. And if you are a frequent flyer with us and we see you all the time, it was lovely to see you again. And we cannot wait to see how many more of you join us for our next session. Have a lovely rest of your day, and we'll be back tomorrow. Bye, everybody.